Morning, everyone. An update to the Canada's Wonderland incident, and Global News is reporting, quote, York police say incident at Canada's Wonderland not hate-motivated, no charges laid. York Regional Police say an alleged assault at Canada's Wonderland last month is not being treated as a hate crime. After a thorough investigation into the incident at Wonderland on June 27th and reviewing all the facts, video, and witness accounts, we have determined this was not a hate-motivated incident and no charges will be laid, police said in a post on Twitter Tuesday afternoon. That doesn't stop them from saying it's very troubling. It's really interesting, the media push and how they report these things. Really interesting. Speaking of push, it's interesting the language the Liberals use around climate change. I wanted to give you a couple of examples. So we're going to go through, a ton of tweets here. Quickly, though, very quickly, Catherine McKenna is saying climate change is real, and I'm just going to highlight that part, okay? Whatever. Climate change is real. The science behind climate change is real. This kind of rhetoric is completely irresponsible. The rhetoric of calling CO2 plant food is very irresponsible, as she's referring to Maxime Bernier's tweet on CO2 is not pollution. Anyway, that's an interesting statement. That's not rhetoric. That's science. That's fact, actually. That's not rhetoric, Ms. McKenna. Here's another one. A sorry sight to see an Ontario Conservative leadership candidates try to outdo each other in having no serious plan to tackle climate change, but Ontarians know that climate change is real. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Climate change is real. Climate change is real. And it's alarming. The analysis highlights the importance of taking urgent and serious climate action. It's time to act. Climate change is real and a serious problem. Right? Here's Navdeep Bains. Climate change is real, and we must act now. Our government is putting a price on pollution. Right? October 31st. Here he is again. Canadians know that climate change is real. This is April 3rd, 2019. It's just, the rhetoric is interesting. That's rhetoric, Minister. That's rhetoric. To the young Canadians who march today, we hear you. Climate change is real, says Justin Trudeau. Here's another one for Trudeau. Canadians know that climate change is real and that we need to act now. Here's another one from Trudeau. Climate change is real and it has a cost. Sorry, I haven't been giving you the dates, but they're all recent. April 8th, 2019. This is another one from Trudeau, and this is from March 13th. He says, climate change is real, and that's why we're making big polluters pay. Well, except Beldoon, right? And all the other big polluters. And just the BC coast has tanker bans, and just Canadian tanker bans, but Saudi tankers, no problem. Right? Yeah, the big polluters, Justin. We get it. Here's another one from Trudeau. This one's, 13 March, climate change is real. I already said that one. Here's one from, Andrew Scheer. Climate change is real. Climate change is real and represents a serious threat. Oh, man, those Liberals are sounding more and more similar, aren't they? My goodness, climate change is real. It's real. If you say it enough, if you repeat it, people will totally believe you. Right, Ms. McKenna? That's the modus operandi here, guys. And I wanted to underline this because it's incredibly concerning. This is rhetoric in action. This is being shoved down everybody's throat. Mr. Bains is not the climate minister. There's other Liberal ministers and Liberal backbenchers who also repeat this rhetoric. I just thought that 3 was enough, but I could have gone on and on and on. 3 or 4, right? But it's interesting, the crossover in the rhetoric here. What is Mr. Scheer thinking? Is he thinking Justin Trudeau's got it right? I wish I could be half the prime minister, right? I mean, really, what are you doing chasing Trudeau on this rhetoric, Mr. Scheer? I don't understand it, especially when all of the Liberals are using the same language. You are just falling in line, and I don't get it. I don't get it. Is that really what the polls say? Seems really interesting. This was something that popped up yesterday. The Trudeau Liberals have been championing rights for everybody, and specifically carving people up by their group, saying you deserve rights and you deserve rights and you deserve rights. And the latest one is conversion therapy ban. So I don't have an opinion either way. I'm just saying this conversion therapy ban thing seems to be coming out of nowhere. And I'm not supportive of conversion therapy, but we're a couple of months from an election here. And this just seems like an election, like trying to shoehorn this in as an election issue. Scheer says that he's not going to comment on it because it's like a half-baked policy, which I agree with. So even the news running with this and asking Scheer what his position on this is very, very strange to me. Here's Global News saying, quote, Andrew Scheer will wait and see before taking stance on Liberal plan for conversion therapy ban. Conservative leader Andrew Scheer told Global News on Wednesday that while his party opposes forced conversion therapy, he's waiting for further details before taking a stance on efforts to impose a federal ban on the discredited practice. Reports this week revealed that Liberal cabinet ministers had sent letters in June to all provincial and territorial ministers of justice and health urging them to halt conversion therapy in their jurisdictions. The Liberals said they would, in the meantime, explore amendments to the criminal code to prevent, punish, and deter it. When asked by the Global News whether Scheer would support such a ban, he said, "This is something that the Liberal government is only now recently proposing. We will always, of course, stand up for the rights of LGBTQ individuals and protect their rights, and of course, we're opposed to any type of practice that would forcibly attempt to change someone's sexual orientation against their will," or things like that. So we will wait and see exactly what's being contemplated. Right, there isn't a plan here. There's nothing that's been said. And I find it interesting that he says we will stand up for the rights of LGBTQ. All Canadians have the right to be who they want to be who they are, right? You have a right to self-expression, right? We have a constitution. It is very clear. And the idea of saying, I'm going to stand up for LGBTQ rights seems strange to me, just like it's strange to have a specific motion, M103, for Islamophobia. You have a right under the Canadian Charter to practice religion in whichever way you like, right? You have a right to that. That is inherent in your human rights, right? You can do what you like with regards to religion and God, etc., especially within Canada. So it's interesting to say that Islam, or people who follow Islam, are a special class, because everyone in Canada deserves a right to not be judged by the God they follow, right? A right to be an individual in their own right, regardless of their religion. That is the promise of Canada. And so that's interesting as well. And not saying that sexuality and sexual orientation are the same as religion, but I'm saying that inherently it has to do with the same thing. In your head, you are who you are, and you have a right to do that in Canada. So everyone's rights are in jeopardy at this point in time. When you say that you're standing up specifically for these people's rights, everyone has a right to that. Everyone, right? And conversion therapy shouldn't be happening. But again, this seems like electioneering, right? I haven't heard of any conversion therapy. It hasn't been a big thing since like the mid-90s, I think. I mean, it really hasn't been a big thing. Has this been in the news that the Liberals have decided that it's a problem and that it needs a solution? And does the solution need to take up this much time? My goodness, even this amount of time on my show seems like more than this needs. Is this a big problem that I'm missing? It could be. It could be. I'm not plugged into that world. I don't know. I really don't. I'm being genuine. So if this is a big problem, I mean, I think that conversion therapy shouldn't be happening in Canada. But at the same time, the bludgeon of the law, we don't need to create new laws for that, I don't think. I mean, everybody has a right to be who they want to be, as I diatribed about a little while ago. And so could that law not be expanded to include this is unconstitutional, this practice is unconstitutional and therefore should be stopped, rather than let's create a law, let's create a bylaw, right? Conversion therapy ban, it seems like electioneering to me. So I don't know. Tell me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I apologize, but I don't think I'm wrong. Anyway, here is a prepper for the next article and the last one for today. Ooh, I think I'll be right on time. Okay, justice and laws in Canada. And I understand the Liberals have carved up and changed the laws in a lot of ways in the last couple of years, and specifically there have been a lot of laws that have received royal assent in the last month or so. So it's possible that this isn't as up to date as it could be, but it's the Government of Canada website, and we're talking about laws and we're talking about fraud. So I don't think they changed anything with regards to fraud. So here we go. Fraud. Everyone who, by deceit, falsehood, or other fraudulent means, whether or not it is a false pretense within the meaning of this act, defrauds the public or any person, whether ascertained or not, of any property, money, or valuable security, or any service. A, is guilty of an indictable offense and liable to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 14 years, while the subject matter of the offense is a testamentary instrument of the value of the subject matter of the offense exceeds $5,000, or is guilty of an indictable offense and is liable for imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years, or an offense punishable on summary conviction. Summary conviction is you have to pay a fine. where the value of the subject matter of the offense does not exceed $5,000. Okay, so you could be incarcerated for 14 years if it's above 5,000 or below an offense punishable by, you could pay a fine if it's under 5,000. Okay, minimum punishment when a person is prosecuted on indictment and convicted of one or more offenses referred to in subsection 1. The court that imposes the sentence shall impose a minimum punishment of imprisonment for a minimum of 2 years if the total value of the subject matter of the offenses exceeds $1 million. Affecting public market, everyone who, by deceit, falsehood, or other fraudulent means, whether or not it's a false pretense within the meaning of this act, with intent to defraud, affects the public market price of stocks, shares, or merchandise of anything that is offered for sale to the public is guilty of an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 14 years. Here we go. National Post reporting, quote, Toronto hospital fires around 150 employees after uncovering multi-million-dollar fraud. One of the fired employees said she began claiming for physiotherapy she did not receive because she was paying more each month into a benefit plan that she was actually using. In what could be one of the largest and longest-lasting benefit fraud schemes ever discovered in Canada, a Toronto geriatric hospital has dismissed approximately 150 employees for falsely claiming as much as $5 million in benefits over an 8-year period. Quote, it appears to be organized, said William Reichman, president and CEO of Baycrest Health Services. It has to be done in such a way that it would escape at least detection by the benefits administrator. It's a betrayal of trust. As in previous scams of comparable size, such as the one discovered last year at the Toronto Transit Commission, TTC, this one involved misuse of prescription coverage for orthotics, knee braces, and compression stockings, but also physiotherapy. On Wednesday, Baycrest fired those employees who did not resign after a third-party internal investigation by an auditor. The investigation found that one employee had taken more than $100,000 and that several others had pocketed amounts in the $25,000 range. The majority of those staff found to be involved were unionized. They span many job categories and include registered nurses whose profession is regulated and licensed, such that misconduct must be reported to their college. They include personal support workers, housekeeping, and cleaning staff. There are no physicians involved. No criminal charges have been filed. This is the part that's interesting to me. No criminal charges have been filed, and none of the allegations made by Baycrest and its investigations have been proven in court. Baycrest spoke with police twice, the first several months ago, and then again in the last 2 weeks to update them on the conclusion of their internal probe. The hospital administrator, quote, undertook to investigate this on their own, said Detective Sergeant John Whitworth. His meetings with hospital administrators were advisory, he said, and Baycrest has not formally engaged the police to investigate. If it involves public safety, we would take that decision out of their hands, Whitworth said. But as it stands, he has not seen anything that demands police intervention. So the ball was left in their court. I anticipate that they will be back in touch with myself next week, Whitworth said. But if they never call me back, we will never do anything with it. Hold on a second. Didn't we just read that this is imprisonable if it exceeds $1 million, the minimum offense is 14 years? And didn't they just say they knew who the organizer of this was? And the police are playing dumb and blind? We don't know about this. I was advising them, it was just in case it was happening. This happened. We have names. This requires a response. There's a reason there's rampant medical fraud going on. It's because you're stepping back and not doing your jobs, officer. Back to the article. Baycrest investigation found 2 main types of fraud. In one, an employee would submit invoices for services they never received, such as physiotherapy, and pay kickbacks to the provider. In another, an employee would accept unrelated products, purses, for example, or shoes for athletics or fashion, with the provider pocketing the difference in price between those items and the prescribed medical devices. The hospital operates its own employee benefit plan from a pool funded 75% by the government of Ontario, and 25% from employee premiums. So fraud against this system disadvantages both the public and the employee's own colleagues. The plan is administered by Coughlin and Associates based in Ottawa and Winnipeg. This is to a T what this fraud part of the criminal code is describing. And it's interesting, again, that the police say, nothing happened here. No problem. The administrator of the hospital investigated it. So we don't have to get involved. Nothing to see here, just taxpayers pay it, 25% from the employee premiums. Don't worry about your relatives dying in a hospital hallway. Forget it, Unbelievable. Back to the article. Baycrest said consultants discovered the fraud several months ago when the hospital hired them to investigate a possible partnership with other hospitals in a network of approved providers. By looking at Baycrest providers, the consultant recognized some of the other cases of benefit misuse involving orthotics, orthopedic shoes, compression stockings, and braces. That's where we see the most misuse, says Gordon Burke, president of the Orion Audit Limited, the company that conducted the investigation. This area of medical supplies highly unregulated. The roughly 150 employees had been summoned to meetings at Baycrest Wednesday when they were told of their fates. Private security patrolled the campus as fired employees were escorted into taxis or given a few minutes to get their car and return their parking pass. By the end of the day, all those who had not already proactively resigned were terminated for violating the hospital's code of conduct and the trust of the administration. All of those affected had previously been interviewed, according to Reichman, in some cases more than once. We have several confessions, he said. Huh? What? By deceit, falsehood, or other means, whether or not it's a false pretense within the meaning of the act, who intends to defraud, affects the public, market price of stock, shares, or merchandise, or anything that affects that is offered for sale to the public is guilty of an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 14 years. Like, what? This is insane. This is crazy. One of the employees fired Wednesday, who was in higher range of misuse benefits, and agreed to share their formal dismissal letter with the National Post on condition they not be named, said the scam was promoted by coworkers. The employees said they went to a chiropractor, received invoices to submit, then kicked back cash to various people at the chiropractor's office. The kickback ratio was different for different employees. The employees did this for 3 years and had already stopped after discussion with their spouse by the time the chiropractor closed a couple of years ago. So they knew what they were doing was wrong. And their spouse was like, dude, that's not okay. You're going to get in trouble, and trouble being legal trouble, because that's what happens when you're an adult. And they stopped. So, I mean, that implies intent. That implies all sorts of legal ramifications. Again, the police are not going to do anything with this. Back to the article. The letter reports the hospital's findings that, quote, you and or members of your immediate family have committed multiple acts constituting fraud and or theft. You deliberately and intentionally engaged in dishonest and unethical behavior. For this reason, you have irreparably damaged our trust in you. This willful misconduct is grossly inappropriate in any work environment, the letter reads. Not everybody is taking advantage, said another of the fired employees, a woman who was dismissed after 15 years working in hospitality. She said Baycrest was treating her unfairly by not giving her a second chance and an opportunity to pay back the money in question. She said she learned of the scheme from a coworker and began claiming for physiotherapy she did not receive in 2012, but stopped 2 years later. She said she knew it was against policy, but given that she was paying more each month into a health benefit plan that she was actually using, she felt she deserved it. That's why people do things, she said. This is insane. I scroll down. Anytime you enter into a situation where you accuse an employee of fraud, you better be sure you can prove it, he said. Even with documentary proof, an employer can be in for a fight, he said, as indicated by the TTC case where there have been arguments about the degree to which benefits misuse was officially tolerated. Usually there's one person coordinating it, Conlon said. These schemes have a certain degree of sophistication to them. Typically, a group of criminals know people in credentialed professions who are willing to participate in these schemes in exchange for cash, said Gary Askin, a former Waterloo Regional Police officer and now Assistant Vice President, Fraud Risk Management at Sun Life, a large insurance provider. They seek out generous benefit plans and often have a predatory recruiter among staff who can help employees rationalize the fraud. Basically, this is a con, he says, and where it goes bust, the providers are holding the cash and the paper trail points to the employee. He said the industry has to look at more tools such as delisting unscrupulous providers, civil action, and contacting Canada Revenue. He said there is also a push for new provincial offenses to levy fines on providers without burdening the police. Without burdening the police? This is like ABC fraud. I've seen Law and Order episodes about this, like the regular Law and Order, like the guy committed fraud and then he's sitting there looking all sad. Like, this is what your job is. What are you doing if you're not looking at this? Who is running our police force? Are you policing online hate now too? Holy God, it's incredible. It doesn't make any sense. Which I say often. It's said all the time. It doesn't make any sense. Back to the article. Michael Quinville, president of Coughlin & Associates, Baycrest Benefits Administrator, said his company has rigorous standards and protocols in place to defend and detect against such activities. This situation has only served to reinforce our commitment to vigilance and an ongoing process of continued improvement. A number of measures have been implemented to further guard against similar misuse. Baycrest would not say to the degree which it discovered the scheme's leadership, other than to say the whole thing was organized. So yeah, let these guys go. They'll get jobs in other hospitals, and guess what? It's going to happen again. Here's a 2018 article, December 20th, right before Christmas. Medical insurance fraud widespread as providers rip off benefit plans. Yeah. Employers and their insurance providers are reeling at the proliferation of fraud rings, groups of employees who work together to abuse and exploit benefit plans with medical service providers as their eager accomplices. You're sitting in the lunchroom when a coworker comes in and says, I've got $1,000 worth of massage receipts, $2,000 worth of physiotherapy receipts, submits them all, and we can share money, explains Gary Askin, a former commander with Waterloo, Ontario police force, who now works as a fraud investigator with Sun Life. Cash, cards, purses, designer sunglasses, coats, and iPads are examples of what people have been able to get with fraudulent healthcare benefit claims. They say there's no need to worry about getting caught because they know the provider, and if the insurance company calls them, they will validate the claim. Askin refers to fraud ring organizers as recruiters and say the scheme can grow quickly as employees reap rewards and spread the word. They rationalize it by saying, you didn't get a raise last year. Don't worry, it's just the insurance company's money. They make some very compelling and convincing arguments. Sun Life estimates that 85% of its fraud losses involve collusion between medical services providers and employees who are making insurance claims. Clinics that offer massages, physiotherapy, orthotics, and compression stockings are most commonly used. Sun Life delisted a whopping 1,500 providers across Canada last year alone after proving they have been involved in false claims. Claims from those clinics are no longer accepted. So I often talk about wallpapering over the problem or solving the middle problem and not the actual problem. The actual problem here is the rampant fraud that's being allowed to be turned a blind eye to by the police, who are supposed to be looking into it, as far as I understand. And if I'm wrong about that, I apologize. But again, what do the police do other than look for crimes to prosecute? Like, if somebody says this is fraud, they say, oh, there's a department for that, and we'll refer it to Tom over there, and he'll look into this. Is that not what happens? But the asking the insurance provider to be the one to close these loopholes and try and figure out what the criminals are doing to exploit their payouts, et cetera, doesn't do anything if you're just letting the criminals who have all the connections walk away. Like, hey man, do you want to go to a different state and do exactly what we were doing for the last 3 years in Ontario? Yeah, don't do it in Saskatchewan, do it in British Columbia. Why not? You're not going to get caught. The police are going to look the other way. There's no downside, right? Why wouldn't you? It's incredible. Like, this is encouraging this behavior. Link is in the description if you want to read it. Ontario failing to recover $1 million in fraudulent OHIP billings by doctors. This is from March 22nd, 2018. And I'm reading less of the articles and leave the link in the description. You can read it for yourself. Ontario Ministry of Health is doing little to crack down on doctors who improperly bill OHIP, according to information obtained by CBC Radio Canada. A Freedom of Information request shows the province has recovered only $1.1 million in illegitimate billings over the past 2 years, while the Auditor General pointed in her 2016 report to some $6 million in fees improperly paid to doctors. This is a complete waste of taxpayers' money that was supposed to go to health, said NDP critic France Gelinas, sorry if I've got that wrong, in an interview with CBC News. So it's happening at all levels, and I'm not trying to say doctors are guilty or service providers are guilty or anything to that effect necessarily. I'm saying that allowing the people who are doing this to walk free and saying, yeah, we're going to turn a blind eye, we'll let those administrators deal with it, is not helping. It's increasing the costs, and the cost of healthcare is increasing exponentially fast. Here's a Toronto Sun article that talks about the same. I'm not going to read it. This was from 2017. Things haven't gotten better. They really haven't. So the problems in Canada are tangible. The problems in Canada can be seen with our eyes clearly. The problems in Canada are being ignored by our government and our police. The problems in Canada are not these things that they keep trying to shove down our throats. The problems in Canada are real. The problems in Canada are solvable. We can do it if we stop listening to these fake news, these people who are pushing this fake, unbelievable narrative all the time and ignoring these things that we can see, these things that are happening to every day in every town in Canada: homelessness and drug addiction, poor healthcare despite higher taxes. It makes no sense to allow this garbage to continue. Thank you for watching. Check out the People's Party of Canada.ca. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.